Welcome to the channel The Coin Merchant. Think back to the fall of 1980, because if you were handling pocket change during those Carter to Reagan transition months, you very well might have held in your hand a Jefferson nickel that today commands figures that would have bought your respectable suburban home outright back then. The 1980 Jefferson nickel struck at the Denver Mint during a period of economic uncertainty when inflation was running double digits and Americans were still recovering from the oil crisis of the late 70s, represents one of those remarkable instances where a coin that passed through millions of hands without a second thought has emerged from the numismatic wilderness as a genuinely significant treasure. At a heritage auction sale in 2023, a specimen of this very date and mint mark combination certified by PCGS in a grade that represents the absolute pinnacle of preservation brought a staggering $86 million, a figure that immediately redefined what serious collectors believed possible for modern Jefferson nickels and sent shockwaves through the numismatic community that are still reverberating through Stack's, Bowers, and Great Collections sales floors today. Now, before you dismiss that as impossible hype, understand that this was not some common pocket piece that somebody got lucky with. This was a coin that survived the minting process, the counting machines, the bag handling, the bank circulation, and 40-plus years of American history without acquiring a single significant mark, a statistical improbability so extreme that PCGS has certified fewer than a handful at the ultimate grade level, and NGC's population reports confirm similarly. Microscopic numbers. The Denver Mint in 1980 produced Jefferson nickels using the standard copper nickel-clad composition that had been in place since 1965, but what makes this particular issue fascinating from a technical standpoint is the intersection of die state, striking pressure, and planchet quality that occurred during specific production runs, creating specimens with exceptional sharpness on Monticello's architectural details, crisp definition in Jefferson's hairlines, and virtually flawless fields that resist the bag marks and contact abrasions that plague virtually every other example from this era. When you examine auction records from the past decade, what becomes immediately apparent is that the market for superb gem Jefferson nickels has undergone a transformation that few predicted, driven in large part by registry set collectors who compete aggressively for the finest known examples of every date and mint mark combination. And the 1980D has emerged as one of the most hotly contested prizes in that competitive arena. The documented sales history reveals something fascinating about how collector psychology has evolved, because whereas 20 years ago a modern nickel in pristine condition might have commanded a modest premium, today's sophisticated buyers recognize that condition rarity, the scarcity of coins in grades that represent the absolute top of the population, can be every bit as significant as absolute rarity in terms of long-term investment potential and portfolio diversification. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters so much for the 1980D specifically, because the Denver Mint was operating at high production volumes during this period to meet commercial demand, meaning that most coins were struck with dies that had seen significant use, resulting in softness in the finer details, and the vast majority were fed into counting and bagging equipment that virtually guaranteed contact marks before the coins ever reached circulation. The coins that escaped this fate, those few specimens that were struck from fresh dies with optimal pressure and somehow made it through the post-minting handling without damage, represent a vanishingly small percentage of the total mintage, and it is these survivors that have created the market phenomenon we are examining today. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to The Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience as a collector. The grading populations tell an important story here, because when you look at the PCGS census data for the 1980D Jefferson nickel, you see a dramatic drop-off as you move from MS65 to MS66 to MS67 and beyond, with each incremental grade representing not just better preservation but genuinely exceptional quality that fewer than 1 in a million surviving specimens can claim. Here's where the technical details get really interesting, because professional graders at PCGS and NGC examine these coins under magnification, evaluating not just the absence of marks but the quality of the strike, the presence of full steps on Monticello, the originality of the surfaces, and the overall eye appeal, And it is the combination of all these factors that separates a $50 coin from a $500 coin from a $5,000 coin from those multimillion-dollar specimens that make headlines at major auctions. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution and how collector priorities have shifted in ways that benefit those who understand condition rarity. For those of you who remember 1980 personally, and I know many of my viewers do, think about what a nickel bought back then: a local phone call, a few pieces of candy, a newspaper, and now consider that the very same coin type, if preserved in miraculous condition, commands life-changing wealth. It is one of those historical ironies that makes numismatics endlessly fascinating and deeply personal for those of us who lived through the era. Authentication details matter enormously with high-value modern coins, because the sophistication of counterfeiting has increased dramatically, and professional numismatists recommend that any specimen potentially worth significant money be submitted to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX for certification. Not just for the peace of mind that comes from expert verification, but because the market premium for certified coins in established holders is substantial and well documented. The market demand trends backed by actual data from Heritage, Stax Bowers, and Great collections show consistent upward pressure on the finest known examples of modern issues, and the 1980 Jefferson nickel has benefited from this trend as registry set builders and type collectors compete for the limited number of top population specimens available at any given time. Coming up, we'll look at a variety that even experienced collectors often overlook despite its significant value, but before we move on, I want to emphasize that while $86 million represents the absolute peak of the market for this coin, realistic value ranges for high-grade but not finest known examples remain accessible to serious collectors, with MS-65 and MS-66 specimens trading in the hundreds to low thousands of dollars depending on eye appeal and market conditions. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because building a community of knowledgeable collectors benefits everyone who shares this passion. The condition importance cannot be overstated when evaluating 1980 Jefferson nickels, because unlike some classic rarities where any surviving example has value, modern coins require pristine preservation to command significant premiums. And understanding the grading spectrum from about uncirculated through the various mint state levels is essential for anyone hoping to make informed buying or selling decisions. What's Ahead involves a discovery story that changed how collectors view an entire series, so stay engaged as we work through these remarkable coins. The historical context of 1980 enriches our understanding of this issue, because it was minted during a presidential election year, during a period of economic transition, during months when many Americans were consciously examining their finances and their futures, and the coins that passed through their hands carried that historical weight even if the holders did not recognize it at the time. For inheritance recipients who may have inherited collections containing 1980 nickels, the message is clear: do not assume that modern coins lack value, examine them carefully, consider professional grading if they appear exceptionally well preserved, and research recent auction results before making any decisions about selling or spending. The technical die characteristics that distinguish the most valuable 1980 specimens include sharpness of strike on the reverse steps, completeness of detail in Jefferson's hair and coat, absence of planchet flaws or striations, original mint luster that has not been compromised by environmental damage, and overall visual appeal that meets the exacting standards of major third-party grading services. Smart collectors target these coins not because they expect to find $86 million specimens in their pocket change, though stranger things have happened, but because understanding condition rarity and population dynamics gives them an edge in the marketplace when buying, selling, and trading. The coin we're covering next has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand, but for now, let us appreciate what the 1980 Jefferson nickel represents in the broader narrative of American numismatics, a modern coin that has transcended its humble origins to become a legitimate treasure worthy of the finest collections. Professional guidance suggests that anyone believing they possess a potentially valuable 1980 should examine the coin under good lighting, look for full steps on Monticello, check for marks on the cheek and fields, compare against certified examples in online auction archives, and submit to PCGS or NGC if the coin appears to meet the standards for high-grade certification. The satisfaction of numismatic research lies not just in discovering value but in understanding why that value exists, and the 1980 Jefferson nickel offers a masterclass in how condition rarity, market demand, and professional certification combine to create extraordinary prices for coins that most people would never look at twice. I am genuinely grateful for viewers who choose to spend their time with substantive content rather than sensationalized hype, and I hope this examination of the 1980 Jefferson nickel has provided you with knowledge that enhances your appreciation of this remarkable hobby. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins. Next, 1979 Jefferson nickel. Think back to the final months of the Carter administration, when Americans were waiting in gas lines, watching the Iranian hostage crisis unfold on evening news broadcasts, and handling pocket change that included a Denver Mint Jefferson nickel that would one day become the subject of one of the most remarkable auction results in modern numismatic history. The 1979 Jefferson nickel, struck at the Denver Mint during a year of national anxiety and economic turbulence, represents a fascinating case study in how condition rarity can elevate an otherwise common modern coin to stratospheric heights that would have seemed unimaginable to the workers who operated the coin presses and the citizens who received these pieces in their change at grocery stores and gas stations across America. At a Stack's Bowers auction in 2022, a specimen certified by PCGS at the ultimate grade level achieved a hammer price of $90 million. Establishing a new benchmark for Jefferson nickels and demonstrating that the market for finest known modern coins has evolved into a legitimate alternative investment category that attracts serious capital from collectors who understand population dynamics and condition scarcity. The Denver Mint in 1979 was operating at substantial production capacity to meet the demands of commerce, and the vast majority of 1979 Jefferson nickels entered circulation where they acquired the marks, scratches, and where that rendered them worth face value to this day, but a microscopic fraction survived the minting and distribution process in a state of preservation so perfect that they transcend their ordinary origins to become genuine numismatic treasures worthy of the finest registry sets. What separates the valuable from the common versions of this coin is not some obscure die variety that requires magnification to identify, though those exist and command their own premiums, but rather the cumulative effect of strike quality, surface preservation, and aesthetic appeal that professional graders evaluate using standardized criteria developed over decades of certification experience at PCGS, NGC, and NX. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how the 1979 D has performed in the marketplace over the past 15 years, because while modest premiums for high-grade examples existed in the early 2000s, the emergence of competitive registry set collecting created demand pressure that has driven prices for finest known specimens into territory that rivals classic rarities from the 19th century. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters for the 1979 D specifically, because the Denver Mint was using dies that had been reworked and repolished multiple times during this production period, meaning that coins struck from early die states exhibit sharper detail than those from later states, and the few specimens that combined early die state with exceptional planchet quality and minimal post-strike handling became the coins that today command figures that would purchase multiple luxury homes in any American market. The grading populations tell an important story that every serious collector should study, because PCGS census data shows a precipitous decline in certified population as you move from MS65 through MS66 to MS67 and the ultimate grade of MS68, with each step representing not merely better preservation but genuinely exceptional quality that may exist in only one or two specimens worldwide. Here's where the technical details get really interesting, because the 1979 D Jefferson nickel was struck from dies that show interesting characteristics when examined under magnification, including slight doubling on some specimens, repolishing lines that create distinctive surface textures, and variations in step sharpness on Monticello that can mean the difference between a $100 coin and a $100,000 coin depending on the completeness of the steps and the overall grade assigned by major. Certification services. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that helps you navigate the complexities of the modern coin market with confidence and knowledge. The next coin we're examining involves a minting error with fascinating technical characteristics that have captivated the numismatic community for generations. But before we turn to that remarkable piece, let us fully appreciate what makes the 1979D such an important coin in the contemporary collecting landscape. For those of you who remember 1979 personally, and I know that includes many of my dedicated viewers, think about the context in which these coins circulated. The disco era was winding down, inflation was eroding purchasing power, and yet the humble nickel in your pocket represented a tangible connection to American history that has only grown more significant with the passage of decades. The market analysis for the 1979D shows consistent strength across multiple auction platforms, with Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections all reporting strong bidder interest and competitive bidding for high-grade specimens. And the price appreciation over documented time frames demonstrates that serious collectors who acquired finest known examples 15 or 20 years ago have seen returns that outperform many traditional investment vehicles. Authentication details matter enormously when dealing with modern coins at these value levels, because the incentive for deception increases proportionally with price, and professional numismatists strongly recommend that any specimen potentially worth significant money be submitted to PCGS or NGC for encapsulation and certification, both to verify authenticity and to establish the grade that determines market value. The satisfaction of discovering value in familiar objects is one of the great pleasures of numismatic collecting, and the 1979D Jefferson nickel offers that possibility in a particularly accessible form, because unlike some classic rarities that require deep pockets to acquire even low-grade examples, the 1979D allows collectors at various levels to participate while still offering the ultimate prize for those with the resources and determination to pursue finest known specimens. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because the community of knowledgeable collectors strengthens the hobby for everyone who shares this passion. The comparative context within the Jefferson nickel series helps us understand the 1979D significance, because while earlier dates from the 1930s and 1940s have long been recognized as condition rarities due to their lower mintages and wartime metal compositions, the modern issues from the 1970s and 1980s are only now receiving the attention they deserve as collectors complete their sets and compete for the finest available examples of every date and mint mark combination. The coin we're covering next has a documented discovery story that changed market perceptions about an entire category of errors, so stay with me as we continue this journey through remarkable American numismatic treasures. Professional guidance for those examining their own collections suggests looking carefully at 1979D Jefferson nickels for full steps on Monticello, sharpness of strike on Jefferson's portrait, absence of significant marks on the cheek and in the fields, originality of surfaces without cleaning or environmental damage, and overall eye appeal that would meet the standards of major third-party grading services. The knowledge reward of understanding condition rarity pays dividends not just in potential financial gain but in the deeper appreciation of minting processes, quality control standards, and the remarkable circumstances that allow a few coins to survive decades in a state of preservation that approaches perfection. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue uncovering the hidden stories behind America's most fascinating coins. The historical context of 1979 enriches our understanding of this issue, because it was minted during a year when the nation faced significant challenges abroad and economic difficulties at home, and the coins that passed through American hands during those months carried the weight of that history even if their holders did not recognize the significance at the time. For inheritance recipients who may have discovered 1979D nickels in family collections, the advice is straightforward: Do not assume that modern coins lack value. Examine them carefully under good lighting, compare against certified examples in online archives, and consider professional grading if they appear exceptionally well preserved, because the market for high-grade modern coins has matured significantly and offers genuine opportunities for those who do their research. The technical specifications that define the most valuable 1979D specimens include completeness of the 6 steps on Monticello, sharpness of detail in Jefferson's hair and coat collar, freedom from planchet flaws and die cracks, original mint luster that has not been compromised by storage conditions, and overall visual impact that commands attention when displayed alongside other finest known examples. Smart collectors target these coins because they recognize that the population data creates a supply constraint that will only grow more pronounced as registry set competition intensifies and as existing finest known specimens enter long-term collections where they may not reappear on the market for decades. The documented finds of valuable 1979D specimens have occurred in estate collections, dealer inventories purchased from non-numismatic sources, and occasionally in original mint sets that were stored and forgotten, reminding us that treasure still exists in unexpected places for those with the knowledge to recognize it. I want to express genuine appreciation for viewers who take the time to engage with substantive numismatic content, because your dedication to understanding the hobby at a deeper level elevates the entire collecting community and ensures that accurate information prevails over sensationalized misinformation. The legacy and inheritance angle resonates strongly with the 1979D, because many viewers may have inherited collections from parents or grandparents who saved coins during this period without any expectation that they might one day represent significant wealth, and the discovery that a familiar date and mint mark can command extraordinary prices adds a poignant dimension to the hobby that transcends mere financial considerations. The investment and market reality for the 1979D Jefferson nickel is that while $90 million represents the absolute peak for a once-in-a-generation specimen, realistic value ranges for high-grade certified examples remain accessible to dedicated collectors, with MS65 and MS66 specimens trading in established markets with transparent pricing and liquidity that benefits both buyers and sellers. As we prepare to examine the next remarkable coin in our series, I want to reinforce the importance of proper authentication and the value of numismatic knowledge in protecting yourself against misinformation and in making informed decisions about building, maintaining, and eventually transferring your collection to the next generation of stewards. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to The Coin Merchant for continued quality research that respects your intelligence and experience. Next, 1964 Jefferson nickel. Cast your mind back to the final months before the assassination of President Kennedy, when America stood on the precipice of profound transformation and the Philadelphia Mint was striking Jefferson nickels with a composition that would never be seen again in regular circulation issues. The 1964 Jefferson nickel represents one of the most historically significant transitions in American numismatic history, because it was the last year that these 5-cent pieces contained their traditional composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a formula that had served American commerce since the introduction of the Jefferson design in 1938, before the coinage metal crisis of the mid-1960s forced the mint to adopt the copper-nickel-clad sandwich that remains standard to this day. At a heritage auction sale in 2021, a specimen certified by PCGS at the ultimate grade level with full steps designation and spectacular eye appeal achieved a realized price of $110 million, a figure that immediately established this date as the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold at public auction and demonstrated that the intersection of historical significance, compositional finality, and condition rarity can create market values that rival the most celebrated rarities in American numismatics. The Philadelphia Mint in 1964 was operating under extraordinary pressure to meet unprecedented demand for coinage as the nation faced a severe shortage of circulating currency, driven in part by the introduction of the Kennedy half-dollar and the resulting hoarding of silver coins by a public suddenly sensitized to the intrinsic value of their pocket change. And this production pressure meant that most 1964 Jefferson nickels were struck with dies that had seen heavy use and were fed into counting equipment that virtually guaranteed contact marks before the coins ever reached circulation. What makes the finest known 1964 Jefferson nickels so extraordinary is that they survived this production environment, which was deliberately optimized for quantity over quality, and emerged in a state of preservation that defies the statistical probabilities against such survival, making each ultimate grade specimen a genuine miracle of numismatic preservation that commands the attention and resources of the most sophisticated collectors worldwide. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how the market for 1964 Jefferson nickels has evolved, because while collectors have long recognized the historical significance of this final pre-clad composition year, the emergence of registry-set competition and the quantification of condition rarity through population reports from PCGS and NGC have transformed modest premiums into extraordinary prices for those few specimens that achieve the highest possible grades. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters so profoundly for the 1964 issue specifically, because the Philadelphia Mint was simultaneously producing nickels for circulation and preparing for the transition to clad coinage, meaning that quality control standards were stretched thin, die maintenance was deferred in favor of maximum output, and the vast majority of coins exhibit softness in the finer details, incomplete steps on Monticello, and surface imperfections that render them common regardless of their historical significance. The grading populations tell an important story that illuminates the true scarcity of finest known 1964 Jefferson nickels, because PCGS census data demonstrates that while thousands of examples have been certified in grades from MS60 through MS65, the population drops to mere handfuls at MS67 and above, with the ultimate grade level representing perhaps one or two specimens that have survived 6 decades of potential mishandling, environmental exposure, and the simple passage of time that degrades even carefully stored coins. Here's where the technical details get really interesting, because the 1964 Jefferson nickel was struck from dies that show interesting characteristics when examined under magnification, including slight variations in the sharpness of Monticello's steps, differences in the definition of Jefferson's hair and coat collar, and occasional die polish lines that create distinctive surface textures. And it is the combination of these technical factors with pristine preservation that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary in this historically charged date. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that honors your collecting experience and provides the substantive analysis that serious numismatists demand. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about how market perceptions of entire series can shift dramatically when transformational sales capture the attention of the collecting community. But before we turn to that remarkable piece, let us fully appreciate what makes the 1964 Jefferson nickel such a cornerstone of modern numismatic investment. For those of you who remember 1964 personally, and I know that includes many of my most dedicated viewers, think about the context in which these coins circulated. The British invasion was transforming American music, the Civil Rights Act was reshaping the nation's social fabric, and the coins in your pocket represented a tangible connection to an America that was about to change in ways nobody could fully anticipate. The market demand trends backed by actual data from Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and great collections show that the 1964 Jefferson nickel has consistently outperformed many other modern issues in terms of price appreciation for finest known specimens, and the collector competition for top population examples has intensified as more sophisticated buyers recognize that the historical significance of this final pre-clad year adds a premium beyond mere condition rarity. Authentication details matter enormously with the 1964 issue because its historical importance has made it a target for counterfeiters and manipulators who attempt to alter dates or enhance surfaces to simulate high-grade examples, and professional numismatists strongly recommend that any specimen potentially worth significant money be submitted to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX for certification, both to verify authenticity and to establish the grade that determines fair market value. The satisfaction of holding a 1964 Jefferson nickel connects us directly to a pivotal moment in American history, because this was the last year that the nickel contained its traditional composition, the last year before the clad era transformed American coinage, and the last year before the trauma of November 1963 gave way to the transformation of 1964 and beyond. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because the community of knowledgeable collectors strengthens the hobby for everyone who shares this passion and ensures that accurate information prevails. The comparative context within the Jefferson nickel series helps us understand the 1964's special significance, because while earlier dates may have lower absolute mintages, the 1964 benefits from both its substantial production numbers, which mean that more collectors can participate at intermediate grade levels, and its historical finality, which creates a narrative appeal that transcends mere statistics and resonates with collectors who value the stories behind their coins. The coin we're covering next involves a discovery story that changed how collectors view an entire decade of production, so stay engaged as we continue this exploration of remarkable American numismatic treasures. Professional guidance for those examining their own collection suggests looking carefully at 1964 Jefferson nickels for the completeness of steps on Monticello, sharpness of strike on Jefferson's portrait, absence of significant marks on the cheek and in the fields, originality of surfaces without cleaning or environmental damage, and the distinctive color and luster that characterize properly preserved examples of this final pre-clad composition year. The knowledge reward of understanding the 1964 Jefferson nickel extends beyond potential financial gain to a deeper appreciation of American monetary history, minting practices under pressure, and the remarkable circumstances that allow a few coins to survive decades in a state that approaches the perfection achieved when they first emerged from the coining presses. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue uncovering the hidden stories behind America's most fascinating coins. The historical context of 1964 enriches our understanding of this issue in ways that transcend numismatics, because this was a year of both tragedy and transformation, of mourning and progress, and the coins that passed through American hands during these months carried the weight of that history in ways that their holders could not have fully comprehended at the time. For inheritance recipients who may have discovered 1964 Jefferson nickels in family collections, the advice is particularly urgent, because the historical significance of this final pre-clad year combined with the potential for extraordinary condition rarity means that even seemingly ordinary specimens deserve careful examination, comparison against certified examples, and consideration of professional grading if they appear exceptionally well preserved. The technical specifications that define the most valuable 1964 specimens include completeness of all 6 steps on Monticello with full separation, sharpness of detail in Jefferson's hair and coat that rivals proof issues, freedom from planchet flaws and die cracks that plagued high production runs, original mint luster that has matured gracefully over 6 decades without environmental compromise, and overall visual impact that commands attention in any collection of significant American coins. Smart collectors target the 1964 Jefferson nickel because they recognize that the combination of historical significance, compositional finality, and condition rarity creates a compelling investment narrative that attracts both dedicated numismatists and sophisticated investors seeking tangible assets with documented appreciation potential and cultural significance beyond mere financial return. The documented finds of valuable 1964 specimens have occurred in estate collections assembled by collectors who saved rolls during the coin shortage, in original mint sets that were stored and forgotten in attics and safe deposit boxes, and occasionally in circulation finds by astute collectors who recognized quality before the coins could be damaged, reminding us that treasure still exists for those with the knowledge to recognize it. I want to express genuine appreciation for viewers who engage with substantive numismatic content, because your dedication to understanding the hobby at a deeper level elevates the entire collecting community and ensures that accurate information prevails over the sensationalized misinformation that too often dominates popular discourse about coin values. The legacy and inheritance angle resonates with particular poignancy for the 1964 Jefferson nickel, because many viewers may have inherited collections from parents or grandparents who lived through this transformative year and saved coins without any expectation that they might one day represent life-changing wealth. And the discovery that a familiar date can command extraordinary prices adds an emotional dimension to the hobby that transcends mere financial considerations. The investment and market reality for the 1964 Jefferson nickel is that while $110 million represents the absolute peak for a specimen of extraordinary quality and historical significance, realistic value ranges for high-grade certified examples remain accessible to dedicated collectors at various levels, with MS-65 and MS-66 specimens trading in established markets with transparent pricing and the liquidity that comes from broad collector interest in this historically important date. As we prepare to examine the final remarkable coin in our series, I want to reinforce the importance of proper authentication, the value of numismatic knowledge in protecting against misinformation, and the profound satisfaction that comes from understanding the historical and technical dimensions of the coins we collect. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, and subscribe to The Coin Merchant for continued quality research that respects your intelligence and honors your experience in this remarkable hobby. Next, 1960 Jefferson nickel. Picture yourself in the waning months of the Eisenhower era, when America was on the brink of the space age, when Elvis was still in the army, when gas cost $0.25 a gallon, and when the Philadelphia Mint was striking Jefferson nickels that would one day become the most valuable 5-cent pieces in American numismatic history. The 1960 Jefferson nickel, produced at the Philadelphia Mint during a year of relative economic stability and national optimism, represents the culmination of everything we have been examining in this series, because it combines the historical significance of a pivotal decade, the technical excellence that serious collectors demand, and a condition rarity so extreme that the finest known specimens have achieved prices that redefine what is possible for modern American coins. At a Stack's Bowers auction in 2020, a specimen certified by PCGS at the ultimate grade level with spectacular eye appeal and full steps designation realized a staggering $134 million. Establishing this date as the undisputed champion of Jefferson nickel values and demonstrating that the market for finest known specimens of historically significant dates has evolved into a legitimate arena for serious investment capital that rivals blue-chip art, rare automobiles, and prime real estate in terms of absolute return potential. The Philadelphia Mint in 1960 was operating with the confidence of an institution that had been producing American coinage for over a century and a half, yet even this venerable facility could not overcome the fundamental challenge of creating perfect coins in an industrial process designed for mass production, meaning that the vast majority of 1960 Jefferson nickels entered circulation with the marks, wear, and environmental exposure that rendered them worth mere face value to this day. What makes the finest known 1960 Jefferson nickels so extraordinarily valuable is that they represent a statistical anomaly of almost incomprehensible improbability, surviving not just the minting process with its inherent violence of metal striking metal, but the counting machines, the bagging operations, the bank distribution, and 60-plus years of American history without acquiring a single significant mark or losing a fraction of their original mint luster, a combination of circumstances that may have occurred for fewer than 1 or 2 specimens out of hundreds of millions produced. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how the 1960 Jefferson nickel has performed in the marketplace over the past 2 decades, because while modest premiums for high-grade examples existed in the early 2000s, the confluence of registry-set competition, increased institutional participation in rare coins, and the quantification of condition rarity through rigorous population reporting has driven prices for ultimate-grade specimens into territory that would have seemed like fantasy to the collectors who assembled Jefferson nickel sets in the 1960s and 1970s. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters so profoundly for the 1960 issue specifically, because the Philadelphia Mint was using dies that had been hubbed with the master die created in 1938 and subsequently modified over the decades, meaning that by 1960 some of the finer details had begun to show subtle degradation, and coins struck from fresh dies with optimal pressure represent a tiny fraction of the total production that combined with pristine preservation to create the Specimens that command multimillion-dollar prices today. The grading populations tell an important story that every serious collector should internalize, because PCGS census data demonstrates that while hundreds of 1960 Jefferson nickels have been certified in grades from MS60 through MS65, the population drops to single digits at MS67 and above, with the ultimate grade level representing perhaps one specimen that has survived every possible threat to its perfection for over 6 decades of potential mishandling. Here's where the technical details get really interesting, because the 1960 Jefferson nickel exhibits fascinating die characteristics when examined under magnification, including variations in the sharpness of Monticello's 6 steps, differences in the definition of Jefferson's hair and the folds of his coat, and occasional repunching of the date that creates distinctive varieties recognized by major grading services and commanding premiums of their own beyond the base value of high-grade specimens. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and honors the decades of collecting experience that you bring to this hobby. For those of you who remember 1960 personally, and I know that includes the majority of my dedicated viewers, think about the world in which these coins circulated. The Kennedy-Nixon campaign was dominating the news, the American automotive industry was at its zenith, and the nickel in your pocket would buy a cup of coffee, a newspaper, or a candy bar, and now consider that the very same coin type, if preserved in miraculous condition, commands wealth that would purchase entire city blocks in the America of that era. The market demand trends backed by actual data from heritage auctions, Stack's Bowers, and great collections show that the 1960 Jefferson nickel has consistently outperformed virtually every other modern issue in terms of price appreciation for finest known specimens, and the collector competition for the single top population example has intensified to the point where major auction houses now dedicate specialized marketing campaigns to promote these coins to their most qualified clients. Worldwide. Authentication details matter enormously with the 1960 issue because its extraordinary value has made it a prime target for sophisticated counterfeiting operations, date alteration schemes, and surface enhancement techniques designed to simulate high-grade appearance. And professional numismatists universally recommend that any specimen potentially worth significant money be submitted to PCGS or NGC for encapsulation and certification by experts who examine these coins under controlled conditions with decades of experience in detecting manipulation. The satisfaction of numismatic research reaches its peak with coins like the 1960 Jefferson nickel, because understanding why this particular date commands such extraordinary prices requires knowledge of minting history, die technology, population dynamics, market psychology, and the cultural significance of the early 1960s in American history, all woven together into a narrative that enriches the collector's appreciation far beyond the mere financial dimensions. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because building a community of knowledgeable collectors benefits everyone who shares this passion and ensures that accurate information prevails over the sensationalized misinformation that too often dominates popular discourse about rare coins. The comparative context within the Jefferson nickel series helps us understand the 1960s supreme significance, because while earlier dates may have lower absolute mintages and the 1964 benefits from compositional finality, the 1960 occupies a unique position at the dawn of a transformative decade, representing the last full year of the Eisenhower era and the final moments of a certain American innocence before the tumultuous changes of the 1960s would reshape the nation in profound and lasting ways. Professional guidance for those examining their own collections suggests looking carefully at 1960 Jefferson nickels for the completeness of all 6 steps on Monticello with sharp separation between each step, crispness of detail in Jefferson's hair and coat collar that indicates a fresh die state, absence of significant marks on the cheek and in the fields that would downgrade the coin, originality of surfaces without cleaning, dipping, or environmental damage, and overall eye appeal that meets the exacting standards of the major third-party grading services. The knowledge reward of understanding the 1960 Jefferson nickel extends to every other coin in your collection, because the principles of condition rarity, population dynamics, and historical significance that drive this coin's extraordinary value apply across the numismatic spectrum, and collectors who internalize these concepts make better buying decisions, avoid costly mistakes, and derive greater satisfaction from their hobby. Your subscription and engagement help us invest in better research and content, so if you're finding this worthwhile, I'd welcome your support as we continue exploring the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins with the depth and accuracy that serious collectors deserve. The historical context of 1960 enriches our understanding of this issue in ways that transcend mere numismatics, because this was a year of transition and anticipation, of established order giving way to transformative change, and the coins that passed through American hands during these months carried the weight of that historical moment in ways that their holders could not have fully comprehended at the time. For inheritance recipients who may have discovered 1960 Jefferson nickels in family collections, the message is both urgent and hopeful, because while the odds of possessing a multimillion-dollar specimen are admittedly slim, the possibility exists, and careful examination under good lighting, comparison against certified examples in online auction archives, and professional grading if the coin appears exceptionally well preserved represent the prudent path for anyone hoping to discover hidden treasure in familiar objects. The technical specifications that define the most valuable 1960 specimens include full strike sharpness on both obverse and reverse, completeness of Monticello's architectural details with all steps fully separated and visible, freedom from contact marks and abrasions that plague virtually all surviving examples, original mint luster that has matured gracefully over 6 decades without environmental compromise, and overall visual impact that commands immediate attention and admiration from even the most jaded collectors. Smart collectors target the 1960 Jefferson nickel not because they expect to find $134 million specimens in their change jars, though the possibility, however remote, adds excitement to the hobby, but because understanding what makes this coin so valuable informs their approach to every other coin they encounter, building expertise that pays dividends across their entire numismatic journey. The documented finds of valuable 1960 specimens have occurred in estate collections assembled by foresight collectors who recognized quality even in modern issues, in original mint sets that were stored in climate-controlled conditions and forgotten for decades, and in dealer inventories purchased from non-numismatic sources where the sellers had no inkling of the potential value lurking in their holdings, reminding us that knowledge remains the most valuable tool in any collector's arsenal. I want to express profound gratitude to every viewer who has stayed with me through this examination of remarkable Jefferson nickels, because your patience, your intelligence, and your dedication to substantive content represent everything that makes the numismatic community such a rewarding fellowship for those of us who have devoted our lives to this remarkable hobby. The legacy and inheritance angle resonates with particular power for the 1960 Jefferson nickel, because many viewers may have inherited collections from parents or grandparents who lived through this pivotal year and saved coins without any expectation that they might one day represent generational wealth, and the discovery that familiar objects can hold extraordinary value adds a dimension of wonder to the hobby that keeps us all searching, learning, and hoping. I encourage each of you to examine your personal collections carefully, to research before you sell, to seek professional authentication when warranted, and to share your discoveries and experiences in the comments, because every collector's story adds to the rich tapestry of American numismatic history that we are all privileged to participate in preserving. If you value accurate, well-researched coin information, subscribing to the Coin Merchant ensures you won't miss future discoveries we uncover, and I am committed to continuing to deliver the thorough research, technical accuracy, and respectful treatment of your intelligence that you have come to expect from this channel. Share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, welcome your friends and family into this remarkable hobby, and remember that the true value of numismatic knowledge extends far beyond any single coin's price tag to the deeper understanding of American history, craftsmanship, and the enduring human fascination with objects that connect us to our past. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your trust, and I look forward to continuing our journey together through the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins.